this is a very, very terrible crime. It's especially when it involves minors, which is absolutely horrible. And we don't want in Colombia those types of travelers. They are not welcome here in Colombia.
Hello there, and welcome to Wrong Ways Colombia Cast. Our guest for this episode is Colombia's Vice Minister for Tourism, Julián Guerrero Orozco, a man I interviewed back in October 2019 for my then Semana Magazine podcast. Oh, how the world has changed since then. Thanks for joining us, Vice Minister. Now, when we spoke 16 months ago, foreign tourists were flocking to Colombia in record numbers. The sector was booming by all accounts. I'd go as far to say, although you probably won't agree with me, that it was easy being Vice Minister for Tourism. But fast forward to today, and it's an industry, both regionally and globally, suffering particularly badly due to coronavirus and the measures implemented in a bid to contain it. First of all, can you give us an idea of just how tough things have been this last year for those working in tourism here in Colombia?
Well, thank you very much, Brenda, for the invitation, first of all. And you are right. I mean, it has been the worst period in history, probably, for tourism, not only in Colombia, but worldwide. And Colombia has not been exempted from the situation, of course. And we've seen a significant decline in terms of hotel occupancy, international flights, domestic flights as well, tour operators, travel packages, etc. Almost reaching 100% in the worst point, 90-something percent when you speak about the whole industry globally, I mean, in Colombia. Mm-hmm. But, you cannot decide what happens in your life. You just have to confront whatever situation you face. And we cannot just, think about the situation, the terrible situation that Colombia is enduring in terms of tourism. Where we have the freedom is to decide what to do with that situation. And that's where I think that we have put many instruments and policies and measures in place to make sure that the economic impact on the sector is the lowest possible and that we put the conditions for speedy recovery.
Okay. Now, of course, you mentioned those measures, and as always, as somebody who works in the government, they're never enough. There's always going to be some people who will say you can do more. Now, I know NATO, Colombia's National Association for Travel Agencies and for tourism in general, has called for an extension of some of the employment subsidies and different things that you have had for the last few months. Are they going to be extended now? Because we're probably looking at certainly international travel not coming back in force for, I would say, at least another year. So are those measures going to be extended, or is that something you're still considering?
Yeah, let me start by saying that we put in place last year more than 41 measures to mitigate the economic impact. And they had to do with the suspension of the income tax, the VAT, the tourism tax, and several other taxes that affect the industry. We also put in place different measures, like, for example, allowing airlines and tour operators, allowing them not to reimburse money in cash, but in commitments towards the future, like bonuses or vouchers for the future. We adopted also measures that had to do with giving subsidies for the payment of salaries, and as well as special subsidy for guides, for example, among other many things. We also created last year biosecurity stamp. It's called check-in certified, to build trust among consumers and allow companies to have a recognition by a third independent party of the fact that they are implementing the policies, the biosafety measures properly. And at the end of last year, we approved a law in Congress where we included several reactivation or recovery measures, economic measures that had to do with a reduction, for example, of the VAT for air tickets from 19 to 5%, the exemption of VAT for all the packages that had to do with tourism and air transportation. There were many measures that we adopted that amounted, and this is not a exact figure because it depends on the behavior of the sector, but it amounts to between 1.5 and 1.8 billion, and billion in Spanish or in Colombia, it's millions of millions, not thousands of millions. So that's a lot of money in terms of the savings that can be given to the sector to increase demand and the recovery. Now, having said that, you are asking me if there are additional measures to be taken. Of course, as you rightly point out, probably there are never enough measures to assist and help the sector. So nothing is not going to be considered. We need to see how the industry progresses. We have also to recognize that there has to be a limit at some point because it cannot go endlessly. And already very, very significant measures, I would dare say, that probably no other economic sector in Colombia has received more benefits than the tourism sector. Now, all the proposals and new ideas are on the table. They're being discussed. I know it's not only about the extension of economic benefits, but also, for example, lines of credit. We are considering that with the Ministry of Finance. And of course, there's nothing that cannot be discussed, and everything is possible to be put in the table for a discussion in a technical manner.
Okay, a work in progress, I guess, or you continuously monitoring it as the situation evolves. There are a couple of specific ones, because I did put out a few feelers to people who work directly in the industry, hostel owners and other travel agents. I'll come to them in a second. Just one thing I want to, from the customer's perspective, you mentioned that with airlines, you put in place this package where you can get a voucher instead of getting reimbursed your payment if you lost a flight. But you can still get your money back if you want that, I take it.
Sure,
yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because for a lot of people, they may not want to travel again or go to that particular place, or it might have been just at that time. Okay, just some of the more specific ones. There was one hostel owner in Medellín, and he told me because he only has one employee, the employment assistance or salary assistance doesn't apply to him, and that he has had no measures. So he was telling me that it affects him as a smaller operator, and that the measures help more so the bigger operators. Is that something you're aware of in terms of if you only have one employee on your books that you won't get the assistance?
Yeah, I mean, the different types of measures, be them the subsidy, be them tax suspension, or even preferential credit lines, apply to different types of operators. But the truth is that we have tried to cover a wide range of enterprises, being them like very small enterprises, probably as the one you mentioned, or big companies. But I have to say, I don't have the figures out of my head, but I have to say that most of the money has gone to the small and medium enterprises, because we recognize that they are the ones that need probably the most, and that they might have, for example, more difficulty in accessing credit. I don't know the particular case, and I would have to look at the individual case in specifically, but have no doubt that the measures were not adopted just to benefit the big companies. On the contrary, they were adopted to benefit the most vulnerable of all.
Okay, another one that came in to me was from a hostel owner here, a popular hostel in La Candelaria in Bogota. He was saying that the impuesto de predial, which I guess is a property tax, is how we translate it into English, is being charged at the commercial rate, whereas they haven't had the commerce for the last year. So any chances of that being changed?
Yeah, in that case, the property tax is not a national tax. It's a local tax. So it depends on the mayor of the city, or the institutions of the municipality, where we have no control about it. But however, having said that, the law 2068 has a specific article that states that it is allowed for municipalities to suspend or to reduce the taxes, including property tax, during the years 2021 and 2022 because of the situation. So, I mean, legally, they can do it. Now, for each municipality, it will be their decision to see if they want to reduce that tax or suspend it. And in the case of Bogota, it will be for the authorities of the municipality or the city to take that decision. But what is important is that in the law that we just passed, it is allowed for the cities to take those type of decisions.
Okay, well, so I'll get on to that hostel owner in Bogota and tell him he has to go knocking on the door of Claudia Lopez to get that one changed, but we should see.
That's right.
Just in terms of opportunities, though, Julián, because obviously we spoke just before we hit the record button that international travel really isn't going to pick up. It's anyone's guess, but I would imagine for another year or whatever, and especially with restrictions that you have in the UK and Canada in terms of people coming from the likes of Colombia returning to the UK or Canada, they have to go and quarantine and pay a lot of money, etc. And other countries might bring in similar measures. So I guess the focus from your perspective now will be on pumping up domestic tourism, get Colombians to know their country better. So where is that the focus, I guess, is the question, and what are you actually doing to improve that?
Yes, I mean, that's the focus, and I guess that's the focus worldwide. However, I would not like to exaggerate the fact that we concentrate on domestic travel only, because I think it would be an error not only for Colombia, but for different countries just to focus on domestic travelers, because one needs to recognize that the international travelers are good travelers. They have good income. They spend quite a bit, probably even more than domestic travelers. So I wouldn't like to oppose international versus domestic. Now, because there is a limitation in international travel, we need to compensate the lack of international travel with domestic. But we also need not to disappear from the screen. We need not to disappear in the international sphere. And we have also been strengthening in a different way the presence, let's say, of Colombia internationally. For when the time comes, it's not like starting from scratch, but there's also a ground that has been gained in the process. Now, we have been strengthening domestic tourism, yes, of course, and we have been doing it several ways, mainly with the certification that I just spoke about, the biosecurity stamp. It's not only about reducing the risk of contagion of the pandemic in the tourism industry, it's also about building trust. Because it's not enough to be open, to allow the economic activity of tourism to take place if we don't create the demand, the consumer's demand that we need. If we have a demand that is 5%, it's pretty much the same as if the sector were closed. So we have done that with a biosecurity stamp, and we've also put very significant resources, almost double than the amount of resources that we normally allocate for domestic promotion, through the campaign of Yo Voy, with a specific, tailor-made campaign for the situation that's called Colombia sin ti no es Colombia. Without you, it's not Colombia. Incentivizing, and you might have seen in the newspapers and television and the airports, this campaign going very strongly, again, to incentivize travel among Colombians.
Have you got any feedback, though, in terms of confidence, Julián? Because well, there are a number of factors at play, but personally, and I know another few people similar to me, we haven't left the greater environs of Bogota in the last year. And I'm not in a vulnerable category, so I think anyway, for COVID. And it's just that the environment, the kind of atmosphere of it seems like a chore to go traveling. Now, I know that's not the case because I have other friends who have traveled, but the confidence isn't there to kind of encourage people, for some people anyway, to get out there. Is that being reflected in numbers at the moment?
Yeah, no, I think that the end of the year was, of course, not to the levels of 2019, but there was a progressive and increasing number of travelers throughout the country. And we saw hotel occupancy between 30 and 35%, which is, again, not the 57 that we had before, but not the 6% or less that we reached in the lowest point last year. In terms of domestic connectivity, we are around 96% of connectivity domestically. So pretty much all the air transportation that existed before the pandemic is again in place and active. Now, the occupancy of the planes might not be as high as the numbers were before, but that doesn't mean that there is a positive trend in that sense.
Okay. A word, you mentioned it anyway, the air companies. Our friend Declan Ryan also wrote to me asking me, could I ask a few questions? He wanted your opinion on Viva Air's new hub in Medellín, a positive development for the country.
Yeah, very positive. And think about that. They have, I think it's 3 new frequencies that they recently opened, maybe a week ago, I think. And you ask yourself, wow, I mean, new connectivity, new frequencies in the midst of the pandemic. And that's very, very good news. And I think that reflects the trust that airlines and companies have in the recovery of Colombia's tourism. I've had the chance also to speak with different big tour operators and companies that work in tourism, and they see that Colombia is progressing much quicker than other countries in the region, and they are really focused on strengthening their strategy of developing tourism in Colombia.
Yeah, well, I guess time will tell whether Declan Ryan's and Vivair's decision to have more routes and things was the right decision at this time, but we shall see. Just want to bring it back to international travel, because on a lot of the foreign groups on Facebook where we have comments and all that, the people who visit here and expats, whatever, one of the issues has been the PCR test. Now, I know it's not just Colombia that requires this test, but the quick turnaround, the problems with it is another barrier to entry if people do want to come to the country, because it creates that little bit of a problem. But I mean, at the moment, are your hands tied with that due to the health protocols?
Well, I think that Colombia has been more flexible than other countries that require the PCR to be taken in advance. There was a decision by a judge in Colombia that obliged for the test to be taken, but in the effort to try to not affect travel internationally, the test is allowed to be taken when you arrive in Colombia, or even you can spend a quarantine, but if you take the test, you can go in. So at the moment, you can fly without the PCR, and you can take the PCR test in Colombia. While you take it and have the results, you need to be isolated, but that is much, much more flexible than the requirements that many other countries have.
Yeah, well, the UK, for one, like paying £1,750 to have a 10-day quarantine, it's very restrictive indeed. But yeah, I guess we just have to wait and see in terms of numbers if they do come in the months to follow. Just bringing it to other opportunities, because this is kind of cross-departmental, cross-ministries, I guess. But other developing or emerging market countries are looking at digital nomads as an area to tap into. Estonia, for example, I think has a decent program in place in terms of you pay for health insurance, etc. Here, in terms of visas, there are various types, but I don't know if there are any specific for digital nomads. Is that something you've discussed? I mean, I know it's not quite tourism, but it does bring in the numbers, and obviously more people that are coming here internationally to speak highly of the country. It's all positive news for you. So is that an area that you think Colombia could get into a little bit more so than they are currently?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there is an opportunity there. I mean, I think we've all experienced the possibility of working away from the office, and that doesn't mean that you have to work from home. You can also work from a nice hostel or hotel or a very nice place. As long as you have connectivity, there should be no problem. I'm at the moment at my home, and I can work perfectly from here. So I think that there is a big opportunity, and Colombia can be very attractive for that. I am aware that several hostels have been adapting themselves to this type of new travelers, let's say. And again, we're working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but we haven't made that speedy progress as much as we would have liked. But that's something that we need to look into. It's not that easy to create those types of visa. Actually, Colombia just over a year ago had simplified its visa system, and it has a lot of technical requirements, etc., to make sure that the system that you put in place is the appropriate one. But there is a big opportunity, no doubt, in trying to attract those types of travelers.
Well, I think, Julián, I speak for many other foreigners here when I say maybe you could have a word with La Cancilleria. The system has been a little bit arbitrary of late since they made those changes. Kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. And then we've had some high profile cases of social media influencers going on and making a case, and then they get a visa decision overturned. Anyway, that's another story. I know it's not your area, but if you're having a word with La Cancilleria, maybe you can mention that. I do want to bring up another couple of points, non-COVID related. And this came from the hostel owner in Medellín, because the last time we spoke, as I mentioned at the top of the interview, was back in October 2019. And that very day, I went to Medellín for the first time since 2012. Actually, I returned. And one thing that really stuck out for me, Julian, and it was, well, I have to say it was rather intimidating. In Plaza Botero, the number of blatant, in the middle of the day at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, of prostitutes in the most popular square of Medellín. And the hostel owner in Medellín actually sent this to me as well in saying, it's a topic that you could raise with the minister in terms of, is it something, I'm guessing it's something you're aware of and something that you're not too happy about. I mean, Medellín has worked wonders. And we spoke about Medellín in our last interview in terms of Pablo Escobar tours and all that kind of negative tourism, if you want to call it that. But we talked about how its image has changed remarkably. But that, I have to say, Julian, like, I was really shocked. It really did take me back to go, wow, this is in the middle of a very popular tourist hotspot in the middle of the city. What are your thoughts on that?
No, my thoughts is this is a very, very terrible crime. It's especially when it involves minors, which is absolutely horrible. And we don't want in Colombia those types of travelers. They are not welcome here in Colombia. There's nothing that we dislike more than that type of tourism. And we're working together with the police, and we have had several operatives of the police, and people have been captured, etc. But again, the effort that is made is, of course, not enough, because increasingly more people want to come for that reason. But we conduct operatives. We conduct also we call them formalization brigades, where we talk to people and try to incentivize for this not to happen. It's quite difficult. And we also made a big effort in the new law, the tourism law, the 2068 law adopted last year, to include a reference about the prohibition to allow the stay of minors without their parents or their legal responsible. Not that this didn't exist before, because as I say, it's a crime. It's a crime, and you should be in prison if you do that with minors. Of course, it's different if they are overage. But there was no consequence in terms of tourism. So a hotel could just allow that. And if they capture somebody, it would be for the people that participated in that crime. But there was no consequence, for example, of the closure of the hotel. Now, with what we included in the law in December last year, there will be a consequence for that. And we're trying to strengthen the action between the police, the Fiscalía General de la Nación, the Industry and Commerce Superintendency as well, that has the inspection and control and vigilance over the operators of tourism, to try to reduce this as much as possible. But this is really a cancer that we need to fight more strongly. But you can be assured that we are not just sitting down with our hands crossed, not doing anything. We are. I think it's a huge problem, very difficult to manage and to attack and to combat, especially because there is no denounce. There's people that are involved in this industry, or the victims of the industry, they don't let the authorities know. And of course, there's the issue of victimization again, that you don't want to re-victimize people that have been victim of this crime. Submitting them to a legal process, etc., etc. It's quite difficult, but we are trying our best to combat this crime.
Okay. Well, one simple thing, and it might be a little bit kind of belittling the problem, but the hostel owner in Medellín had said, like, on a practical level, just having maybe a tourism office in the likes of Plaza Botero, Parque Lleras, and with tourism police there 24/7 might be one way to kind of deter the problem in some regards. I'm not sure if that happens. I mean, that can be one among many other, but I think, these are not just like incidental things that happen. These are criminal organizations that are dedicated to this activity. So it's not about just like somebody that improvised and say like, okay, I'm going to do this for once to get some money. They are
criminal organizations. And actually, a little bit over a year ago, we conducted an operation. And when I say we, it's the national police. And we were in Parque Lleras with the general prosecutor, with the mayor of Medellín, with the police, giving the results of that operation, that it even implied the arrest of an American citizen in New York, which was quite important to send the signal that foreigners that are coming to Colombia to do this type of crimes are not welcome here, and they will be prosecuted not only in Colombia but also abroad.
Yeah, and of course, if people think we're having an attack on Medellín, of course it's not. I mean, Medellín has many great things to offer as a city for tourists or people who want to relocate there as well. There's a lot going for it, but of course, this is an issue that, as you said, you're very anxious to tackle, and I'm sure you're doing your bit. In about 16 months' time, Julián, we'll have a new president of this country. Duque can't run again, of course. There might be a successor. But will you be happy to leave your position, or do you want to continue working? You've been working in tourism for a long time. You were with Pro Colombia, of course, before this. It's, I guess, part of your DNA to work in tourism. So what's the future for the vice minister in next year?
No, I think that these works imply a lot of responsibility, and it is an opportunity really to serve your country and try to do the best you can. But I think that change is always good. So I'm not aspiring. I have no interest in remaining for a long time in the job. I think that change is good. I think that there are important things that I have achieved, and with all modesty, I think that I have good results to show, especially when it comes to putting sustainability at the heart of the industry. I think that Colombia has to make a bet not to make sure that people reap the benefits from tourism for the next 2, 5, or 10 years, but hopefully for the next 50 or 100 years. So I think that we've done a lot in that sense. We published the first sustainable tourism policy in Colombia, the first one that we've ever had. We published the illustrated training handbook for nature guides in Colombia, which is a really great publication that allows for a scientifically based interpretation of Colombia's natural patrimony. We also passed the law 2068 that has a big chapter on sustainability, where we have incentives, the improvement of sanctions also for combating people that destroy the environment. And we have different figures in the law that will be too detailed to tell you about, but again, that puts sustainability in the heart of the industry. I think that that's the largest and most important bet that I personally have made, with the aim not of having tourism, as I already said, for just a couple of years, but really to take advantage of tourism, and also that tourism serves for the conservation and preservation of that natural heritage that we have. And it is precisely the motive for people to come visit us. Okay,
yeah. And of course, when we talk about nature and the environment, well, there's no better country than Colombia. We spoke the last time, of course, you've got five countries in one here. But just finally, any chance then that we'll see Julián Guerrero Orozco on a ballot paper in the coming years? Any chances of you running for office at all?
Absolutely no. I will go back to my private endeavors. I would love, and I will stay working in tourism, in sustainable tourism, maybe through consultancy or maybe through my own business or something of that sort. But no, I think it's more than enough. I think I've worked in the public sector more than 20 years, or 20 or 25 years. So I think that's about enough, and I will probably be doing other stuff.
You've served your country well enough, so yeah, time for a little bit of a break. Look, Vice Minister for Tourism, Julián Guerrero Orozco, I appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Wrong Ways Colombia Cast. Remember, guys, if you want to get in touch with me on Twitter, you can, with the handle being @WWayCorrigan. But until the next time, ciao.
Thank you, Brendan.